You have heard about the agency carousel. You might have been on it where you hire agency after agency and just waste and lose money and waste and lose time not moving your brand forward. Bad agency experiences are so common, and that leads a lot of people to think they should in-house their ad spend. And I'm not sure that's the right answer either, because it's really hard to find great talent. There's all kinds of ways to think about this issue of agency versus in-house. I was recently on a panel about this exact topic, and I've got thoughts on how to sort it out. When should you hire an agency? Should you hire an agency at all? Should you in-house your ad spend? I'm going to answer the question for you today. All right, I was just on a panel at Commerce Roundtable, the Sun Lane conference down in San Diego, and that got me thinking a lot about this question. The prompt for the panel was, do agencies suck? And it's such a common concern. And I mean, just like outside of the panel, I've heard so many operators tell the story of just like agency after agency after agency and not being able to find forward movement for their brand. It's so frustrating. You hear about other brands growing their ad spend, growing their business, things going well, and you can't figure out why it's not going well for you. And so people sometimes get this idea that agencies are just bad. Everybody's heard of these agencies experiences where they get really bad service. The sales calls are awesome. You get so excited, but then you get put with some super junior employee who doesn't know what they're doing. You know, that's a really common problem. People feel like they're getting gouged on pricing for agencies. They're not getting enough attention. All of these different issues come up when people hire and bring on ad agencies. And so, like I said, it leads to sort of a range of reactions, including the sense of maybe you just shouldn't hire an agency. Maybe you should in-house it. And the logic oftentimes goes like in-housing is cheaper. In-housing also gets people who are dedicated full-time to your brand, instead of like, this is another common agency problem that people feel like they're not getting any attention because the agency team that they're working with has 17 clients or whatever, you know. And they often actually think that agencies are just sort of like evil, like they're out to just steal your money for their bottom line, you know? And so they think in-house is the answer, and, you know, dedicated full-time person. But then there's all kinds of problems with in-housing spend too. What happens when you hire a really talented in-house employee, but then as things start going well, they immediately want more money? What happens when that person gets poached by another brand or agency or whatever, or they're doing all kinds of freelancing on the side because they realize that if they're good, there's just all kinds of money to make. So all of these issues come up with both. And so I want to tell you today how I think about this really important issue of whether or not you should hire an agency. And before you get too far ahead of yourself and think, Andrew, you run an agency, like you're just talking your book here, I actually am not going to, this is a preview, tell you that the answer is to hire an agency necessarily. I think agencies are a great idea. There's a really good place for them. I think it's hard to hire them well, and I'm going to explain how I think about that as well. But, you know, I run a boutique agency. Like, I have 5 clients. I'm not trying to add more clients. You might have heard me say that before. So this is not me just trying to drum up business for my agency. I'm perfectly fine when people want to do other approaches, including hiring other agencies besides me or in-housing. I've helped brands. I've literally helped brands fire me and hire an in-house replacement at times. I think if it's the right fit for the brand, there will be plenty of work for me. I'm not really worried about it. I'm going to try and be as objective as possible. I've also come at this, you should know, from every angle. And I think that's an important bit of clarification here. I started as a media buyer in-house, handling Facebook ads and Google ads for Kalo. This is, 9 years ago now, something like that. So I was fully in-house there. I was also doing other kinds of ad buys, including some direct media buys at the time, and working on the marketing in general. Then I went from there to Common Thread Collective with Taylor Holiday, where I was an ad strategist. I was actually the first ad strategist at CTC besides Taylor. So he actually split the clients in 2. He took half, I took half, and we got to work. And then eventually became the head of growth there. So I saw the agency from an executive position as well. From there, CTC launched 4x400, its own aggregator. So I was sort of back on the brand side, though, working with multiple brands, which I eventually ran 4x400. And then from there went freelance, and now I have a team and an agency, and that's what I've been doing for the last few years. So I've really seen this from all sides, and can totally see perspective on all of it. And so I'm going to walk you through how to think about this question as best as I can of what is the right way to approach an agency versus not. And I do think that that there are some really important guidelines for you to think through. And the first of those is to think about the timing of your spend. The timing of your spend is really, really important, and the timing of when to hire an agency. People really underrate this as they think through this issue. The thing you need to really be thinking about here is, are you actually at a place where it makes sense to hire an agency? And so what I would say is there is simply no agency or in-house solution that makes sense for most brands if you're spending less than 50 grand a month. Now, I'm thinking of Meta ads in particular here. I think with Google ads, that number comes down some because there's some more technical aspects to Google ads, et cetera. And also Google ads agencies tend to be a little more affordable. They're also less creative intensive. Email agencies are sort of a different deal. So I'm really thinking about growth ads, really focused on Meta, et cetera. And so we'll kind of limit the conversation there because I think that's also where the point of people's frustrations are. If you're spending less than 50 grand a month on Meta ads, it basically doesn't make sense to hire an agency. People sometimes come to me wanting to do that. There's occasionally a spot where your brand's economics are so good and the potential for the brand is so good that an agency would take you on at an early stage, sub 50 grand, and could feel like they could deliver a service where maybe they won't make money right away, but they'll make money over the longer term, and it can be a fit, for something in that situation. I've certainly done that before, and in fact, there's ways in which I really like that phase of business. But in general, I think it's a really bad idea, and here's why. It's because of what I just alluded to, which is, does the agency make money on you? This is a counterintuitive thing about thinking through the agency question, which is that you actually want the agency to make a margin on your bill. And that's because if they don't, you are not valuable to them. It's actually very similar to hiring an employee in this respect. If you underpay an employee, you are not that valuable to your employee, and they will go look for other places to use their time and effort. I've watched this happen repeatedly. In fact, when I was on this panel with at this SendLane conference in San Diego, I talked to Nate Lagos, who had been to a couple different places, and at one point he left a CMO job because he was getting drastically underpaid. So as far as he could tell, and he was right, he was getting drastically underpaid. And so the brand was making a lot of money on his really high quality work, but Nate was not. And so he just left. And that was probably a terrible decision for that brand because Nate is really talented. And so the same dynamic applied in the in-house employee side as it would for an agency. You actually want the agency to make money on your spend because that's how the agency creates value for themselves. And that is really good for you because if you are valuable to the agency, then the agency is going to give you really good care. And the problem at being sub 50 grand in ad spend is that there's simply not enough money left over for both parties to make money. If you think about this as a percentage of spend kind of model, like I set a minimum where I just won't take a client that's going to pay me less than 5 grand per month. And frankly, I won't take a client that I think is going to sit at 5 grand a month for a while. I'd only take that client for a little bit if I really thought I could grow them, like I mentioned earlier. But in general, if you are paying less than 5 grand per month, just think about how much margin is left over, how much resourcing. You know how much people cost, how much employees cost. Like if that's what the billable is at the Meta side, they can just only give you so many hours before it becomes impossible for them to make a margin on somebody's time in the business. And that's what they are doing. That's what the agency business is. They're marking up somebody's time to make a margin. Now, they're doing a lot of other things too, but that's fundamentally how the margin works in the business. And so at that level of spend, it's just really hard. On top of that, at that level of spend, you sometimes can learn really slowly what works. You need somebody who's probably thinking really hard about what creative is going to work. You need to have gotten some additional W's on the board. And a lot of times that's not going to happen with an external agency unless, again, there's this really sort of unique situation. On top of all of that, what I believe is that one of the most important things that you need to do to have good agency relationships is to be able to speak intelligently to them. I hear this story all the time. Operator is working with an agency. The agency tells them, okay, we just got to test X. We got to just test Y. We just got to test Z. And the agency knows more about the platform than the operator does. And so they keep saying these things and the operator just kind of goes, okay, well, my agency's telling me we got to keep doing this and nothing is working that they're doing, but they say we got to keep testing, got to keep spending. And 6 months later, they've burned a bunch of money. They haven't gotten anywhere and nobody is happy with it. And the agency gets fired and the operator feels like this sucks. Like I didn't get anywhere in my business. That story happens all the time. And the reason that happens, like if you're an operator listening to this and you're feeling in the dark about what your agency is doing, you feel like you don't understand how they're thinking about their media buying, their creative, anything like that. It's because you don't know enough about the platform and you need to know something about the platform. Listen, if you're running an e-commerce business of retail goods, it is incumbent on you to understand how Facebook ads works. You must dedicate yourself some amount of time to understanding what the best practices are, what you're looking for. You do not have to operate it yourself forever, but you need to know. And there's a really simple reason why, which is that it's very likely that your Facebook ads are either the second largest or maybe even the largest single line item of cost on your P&L. The only one that would usually compete with it is COGS. Okay, the actual product cost itself. But sometimes Facebook ads is actually meaningfully more than COGS for brands. And if it is the largest or second largest cost on your P&L, you as the operator of the business need to understand where your money is going. You need to know what's happening. It also means that small differences in performance in that one line item of cost actually make a really big impact on your total P&L. A 10% improvement on your OPEX, or let's say a 10% improvement in your software costs, is a really different thing in your business than a 10% employment on your first or second biggest cost in your business, right? It's just a larger dollar amount. And so it has a much bigger impact, and therefore you need to understand it. And the way to protect yourself from losing a lot of money and time is to deeply understand it. So sub 50 grand, what I recommend to everybody is to learn it yourself, run it yourself at least for a while, or at least be very close to it. Understand deeply the best practices in how meta ads works. Listen to my podcast. Go sign up for admission. There is an admission ad read in this, like use my offer for it. And I tell people that all the time. I very joyfully have an affiliate relationship with admission precisely for this reason, because there is a lot of garbage meta ads content out there. There's a lot. It is misleading and is not going to help you. And admission is, in my view, the best information presented in the best way with the best support from both community and coaching. Not going to belabor it anymore. I just told you should go sign up for admission. Go do it through the show notes so you can get a free coaching call from that team when you are setting up your meta ads. Get the very best meta ads principles, the best playbook, learn it through courses, get access to a community there as well of other operators in the same boat as you. And then at the same time, get coaching help via the team from Common Thread Collective. Incredible opportunity with a 30-day money back guarantee. So there's really no risk to you at all. Go get into that community right now. Don't wait. Do what it takes to set aside time to get the knowledge you need to manage a team really well, and do it through my link so you get your first coaching call for free, or if you sign up for a year, you get 4 coaching calls for free, which is awesome. It's a really awesome service. I think it will set your business up for success in the long term. Go follow the link in my show notes. Go join admission today. So if you're sub 50 grand, especially, you should be in there taking courses, learning from Taylor Holiday and others, because it will help you so much to understand how to do that. It's going to be much cheaper than any agency is. And it's going to also do something so crucial, which is train you in core financial, media buying, and creative principles, so that when you go to actually hire and manage an agency, and I think there's a day when you probably will, or an in-house operator for it, whether it's an agency or an in-house solution for this problem, when you go to manage that person, you will have a much better understanding of how to talk through the issues, what you're looking for, what makes good practice, and then that way you can manage people better. It doesn't mean you have to look over the shoulder the whole time, just means that you can be on the same page about the overall strategy. So sub 50 grand, the answer is don't hire an agency, don't even in-house it. Learn it yourself. If you're an operator of a bootstrapped e-commerce business, you need to understand it. Don't pawn that off on somebody else. Understand it yourself, take the time, learn it, and do it. So what about when you get past that 50 grand a month kind of stage? What should you do then? Okay, now this is where it gets a little bit more complicated, because now your business is growing, you've got some resources, you're thinking about, should I handle things myself? And so let me give you a few principles for how I think about agencies versus in-housing, and just in general what you're looking for here, okay? Principle number 1, above everything else, the most important thing, it's related exactly to what I just told you. Like, just think about what the implication I just told you is. Number 1, the goal is hire the playbook. Hire the playbook. As I've said before, and as Taylor Holiday has said too, the worst piece of advice that gets repeated every day on Twitter is every brand is different, test everything. That is wrong. Every brand is not different in some of these ways. You should not test everything. What you should do instead is plant your feet firmly on the solid foundation of a really good e-commerce playbook. And you should let your business grow based off of that. And when you are hiring an agency, above everything else, you're not shopping for talent. You're not shopping for cost. That's something people do a lot. You're not shopping for like flashy creative. What you're shopping for is a playbook. And that means 2 things. What you're shopping for is, first, the right playbook at the level of what they articulate. Okay. So they need to, the agency that you're hiring or the in-house person that you're hiring, in both cases, needs to be able to articulate to you a playbook that represents the best possible practices. Okay. And again, like I would look at something like admission as a place to learn those things. Because, and for me, here's what that means, right? It means creative volume matters a lot. It means conceptual clarity at the creative level. It means your ad buying approach is related specifically to the economics of your business, that you understand that the ad spend is driven by economic factors, by financial factors in your business. So your unit economics are producing your ad spend strategy. That includes things like margin, TAM, LTV, all that stuff is going into how you think about what products to advertise, and crucially, how much, like what your ROAS target should be and what your goals should be, what your forecast should be. Probably at this point, your agency or your in-house solution should be giving you a clear cohort-based forecast of your ad spend. Like I think we're just at a point now where that should be a non-negotiable. If they're not giving you a cohort forecast, you should not hire them. That is just at this point a really important part of how a D2C business grows. And a great agency, and there are plenty of agencies that do this, now provides that as standard practice. A subpar agency does not. So that's the financial side of things. And then the media buying ought to be based in manual bids, some combination of bid caps, cost caps, TROAS targets. I have some really specific ways I do it. They should not be running separate creative testing campaigns. That's like a massive cost in your business. I would say, like, I just would not be hiring somebody based on that. And what is happening here, right, is that I am articulating the way that I run my brand spend. I believe these are correct principles. The way that CTC runs theirs, the way my friends at Kinship run theirs, and there's a reason I keep relationships with only a couple of these brands doing a couple of these things, because I really believe these principles will help you a lot. And if you want intros, by the way, if you're listening to or watching this and you're interested in what I'm saying, you want an intro to somebody at one of these places, I'm happy to send it. So make sure, just reach out to me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com. Tell me your situation. I'll tell you who I think the right fit is for you based on size and all those things. I'm more than happy to try to help you set up that relationship. Okay. So do reach out to me, or at Andrew J. Ferris on Twitter. Those will both be great. This is the thing, though. The playbook is what you're hiring for. Now, here's the thing. The theoretical articulation of that playbook is different than the operational execution of the playbook. And this is actually the harder thing to suss out when you are hiring an agency. I get that they have the right ideas, and lots of agencies and agency salespeople are good at articulating the ideas. What you should be looking for is, how confident can I be that those ideas actually get operationalized into my ad account? How confident can I be that the person running my ad account understands and can do those? And there's a couple of ways to do this. The first is to ask really specifically about the details of the process that the agency will take you through, or again, the detailed plans that an in-house solution will take you through. How much detail can they give you, and how this is going to get operationalized in the business? What's the timeline? How many ads are they going to give you if that's part of the question? They may not have an exact number of those. They may have an exact number. There's really a big difference between stills and videos. Like, why are they going to do that? Anything you can do to suss this out. One thing I think you can try and do is actually talk to the person that would be managing your specific account. So if you can get actually a phone call with a team member who is going to be your strategist, that can give you a sense of things. Because what you want to know is that actually, if that team member gets promoted, if they get hired somewhere else, if they leave, that no matter, you're not actually shopping just for talent, you're shopping for that playbook, right? And so this is how you save yourself from having the junior employee who doesn't really know what they're doing. And it also is how you save yourself from, and you just hold them to what they articulate, right? And I would ask this question as aggressively as possible in the interview process. Oh, so sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. You want to make sure that if the person gets poached, or if there's just like a really junior person on your ad account, that person who's working on your ad account is somebody who can actually articulate as well the playbook that the salesperson has articulated to you. And another question you could ask is like, how long has the person who is going to work on my account been working at this agency? The longer that timeline, the better you should feel about it, right? Because the more they will have had reps internalizing what they're saying they can do for you. And if it's not very long, find out how they got there and why you should trust them anyway, etc. And then get referrals, get on calls with somebody who's worked with that person who's going to work on your team, and find out, like, how is it to work with them? What can you say about it? Like, take the time, do the work needed to hire and make sure, again, that playbook is actually going to get operationalized. And this is another challenge with this whole thing, which is that hiring is actually very hard, and people often want to move too fast because they just want to solve their problem. And that's not going to work. You're going to need to actually ask around. I always say, like, I like to talk to somebody. This is actually an old piece of advice from Taylor as well. Make sure you talk to somebody who fired the agency at some point. Another question you could ask is, what's your client retention rate? Like, how many of your clients stick around through any opt-out period? How many of your clients not only stick around through the opt-out period, but like, how long is the average timeline that a client has been working with you? Ask those questions. All of those are getting at the same thing. How well is the playbook being operationalized? And what this begins to get at is one of the reasons agencies can and often are a better solution than in-house solutions are. Because it's very, very, very unlikely that an in-house individual is going to have the level of operational detail that I'm suggesting you ask for from an agency. But that's because an in-house person probably, especially in smaller, even mid-sized e-commerce businesses, had a lot of jobs. They may be an operational wizard, and that's their core skill set, is that they've operationalized this stuff and they know exactly how to do it. But actually, an agency, if you think of what they do, their whole existence should be trying to operationalize a playbook. That is what an agency is. An agency develops a playbook based on a wide range of context from a lot of different ad accounts or from a lot of different businesses. And therefore, they can cut through the noise of every ad account is different, every business is different, test everything, because they see every different ad account, every different brand. And they know what is true and what is not true about that statement. And they can give context to data, and they can give ideas of what works and what doesn't work. Theoretically, that is what makes an agency great. They have so much more access to information than any individual possibly could. And there's just no way to make up for that. And what they should be able to do with that information is turn it into insights and playbooks that then get operationalized through the business. And then they should spend a lot of time refining their processes to make sure that happens and works correctly. That is the product that they're working on, right? That is the agency product above everything else, is that set of services. And so they should be all the time figuring out where are the gaps? Where is what the CEO believes not making it down to the strategist on the ad account? How do we solve that problem? Is it software? Is there another Google Sheet? Is there a deck that needs to get made? Is there a process built into Asana or Notion or something like, and just constantly filling in those gaps to where that can be. And if they can be doing that all the time, they can end up generating a really, really good playbook that does get operationalized really well. And really, really good agencies spend lots of time making sure that they have the best ideas and then making sure those ideas actually get operationalized. So that's the thing you should look for. And that is a real advantage that agencies have over in-house solutions. People undervalue this. Agencies are much better situated to develop playbooks than individuals are. They really are. This is actually part of why I am not building a bigger agency, because I know how much work it takes to build that playbook. And I recognize that it's a huge job that will take a long time with constant refining and requires an operational skill set that I don't think is my core skill set. And therefore, I am not going to try to do that because I just don't think I could make an agency service that great. That's the reason that I think about it. Now, this gets to what I think is the potential solution either way, which is that actually, within some basic constraints of that playbook, the best argument for hiring an in-house person is you might find somebody who is just awesome at their job. And frankly, the bet I make with my clients is that I have a good playbook that I mostly run clearly, is in my head and operationalized through my own words and through my own actions. And then with my small team gets operationalized well enough, because with a small team, it's much easier than with a larger team. So I have a playbook, and then I can go and build that out myself. And my hope is that my experience and knowledge in the space can make it so that I can be a really valuable contributor to somebody's brand at the level of basically individual talent. And this is what I think is possibly true here, is that there's a time to hire individual people. I mentioned Nate Lagos earlier, who was on this panel with me. What I said to Nate and his job as a CMO of Original Grain, really awesome watch company in the mid-8 figures, is that Nate is an extremely excellent marketer. He's really, really good. And so they're really light on agencies, but I'm not telling him you need to go shop for agencies. Now, I actually think a great agency managed by a great CMO would, in fact, probably multiply their efforts and may even be a better solution than what they're doing. But I'm not so worried about that because Nate himself is so talented. So there's one way of looking at this, which is if you have access to incredible talent, I don't really care if it's in an agency or an in-house solution. Go hire incredible talent and get them to work on your business. In some ways, that's what business is finding the most talented people you possibly can and getting them to work on your thing. And so that is the sort of counter argument to everything I said about the playbook. There is a time when that level of talent and 100% of their time and focus and interest being on one business that can outweigh a lot of those things. Now, I think a lot of times, even that really talented person can be helped by a better playbook. And that's where, again, like I said, sometimes the solution is actually to do both. If you're watching or listening to this episode this far in, you probably are running meta ads, and you should be tracking your ads with a pixel installation from Billy. BILY.ai. Billy is what I use for my clients. It is an incredible tool. It is the most affordable tool on the market, of which I am aware. And on top of that, it has the best event match quality with 100% server-side tracking. And it is just really awesome. Within a couple clicks, you will have a new pixel installed via Billy, and you will get the best event match quality, which means Meta is getting the best and fullest data set from your website, from your store, being sent back to Meta. That means Meta in the dashboard is going to report to you the most information possible, and also have the most data to optimize against, which has meant for me, when I've tested this with my clients, that in head-to-head tests, Billy has outperformed other pixel installs just over and over. That's included the native Shopify Meta pixel integration, as well as other third-party tools. It's also more affordable. You can start with Billy for $1 for the first month, and actually after that, like, you need a couple more purchases driven by Billy for the tool to be worth it to you relative to almost anything else that I've seen out there. It is really affordable. It is really awesome. It is really easy to install. You do not need a developer, which is another thing that I love, because pixel installs can be huge, laborious processes. And in fact, it can be a one-stop shop replacement for Google Tag Manager. So GA4 can be installed in one click of a button. Google Ads with enhanced conversions at the click of a button, basically. We're talking less than 5-minute installs on all of these with no developer. So go get Billy today. It's what I use with my clients to track my meta ads, BILY.ai. Go get Billy today. But here, there is another place where many people get tripped up, which is that they refuse to pay that person a lot of money. There are some brands, some operators that just hate the idea of paying a CMO or whatever a huge salary plus bonus plus equity, etc. And that's what it's going to take. One thing you need to recognize in this is that the supply and demand dynamics work such that it is going to be expensive to hire great growth talent. And the reason why is very simple. Think about the demand side. Every business in e-commerce wants great growth talent. They all want to grow their businesses profitably. That's why they started their businesses. And so if there is somebody out there, especially if that person is actively building their network, which they ought to be, because they're looking out for their own human bottom line, for their personal bottom line, their family's bottom line, whatever, they're going to have plenty of demand for them, and the supply is limited relative to the demand for growth talent. Like, there just are only so many people who are that good. There's relatively limited supply. There's a huge amount of demand. And of course, when there's lots of demand and very little supply, well, the price goes up for the things that are in demand. And that is going to happen for you. And the mistake people make is they think they're protecting their bottom line by not paying those people or agencies, either one, what they are worth. And let me tell you something. Do not shop on price in this case, because highly talented people can be huge value adds to your business, even at a high price. The example that I've heard other people give, and that I think is a simple way of thinking about this, if you're any kind of a baseball fan, or you just know who Shohei Ohtani is, the Dodgers just paid Shohei Ohtani $700 million to play for their baseball team for 10 years. And there's some details in the contract and blah, blah, blah. If you know the details of that, doesn't matter. The point is, they paid him a huge amount of money to be great at baseball for them. And the thing is, the Dodgers are going to make a lot of money on that deal, because he is a global superstar who is incredible at baseball, and they will make a lot of money. And the way the Dodgers could make money, could make more money there, was by paying this guy the most money, right? And that same dynamic works out in your business. If there is somebody who is a high enough level of talent, you should break the bank to hire them, because they are going to have a major impact. You've got to get over the idea that all you see is a cost on your business. If they can really help you grow your business, you should be willing to pay it, including at the agency level. You should be happy to write that check if they have that skill set. Now, at some point, the cost gets so high that the market works back against that person, right? If an agency is charging you $70,000 a month to run your meta ads and do your media buying, it's very likely that there are market forces at work that you could go hire for half of that, save $400,000 a year, $500,000 a year, whatever that is, and end up being in a better spot overall, and still get really good growth services for 30 some odd grand a month, right? That's still a pretty big check to write. So at some point, the cost does get too high, but it's pretty far out there. And in general, you should be happy for the individual on your team or for the agency to be making that money. At some level, the whole question of agency versus in-house is dumb. Hire the best person that you possibly can. Now, the best person, again, could be defined, in fact, by the playbook. Part of the thing that makes them great is their ability to operationalize a playbook. It's that's a core part of it. But like I said, there's some ways in which agencies can be better at that. This does get to the upsides and downsides of in-house. The upside of an agency, if the upside is their ability to operationalize a playbook, to have access to this knowledge, the downside is, yes, your strategist is going to have 5 clients, right? Or whatever. And that's how the agency makes money. And so they're not going to be thinking about your brand all the time. And the upside, if the downside of in-housing is that the person has a less developed playbook, but the upside is that they have this huge amount of talent and they can think about your business all the time. That would be the upside part of it, that they are going to take this talent level and even with a less, maybe if you think about the playbook as leverage and then the effort level as leverage, as force, there's two different things there, right? If the playbook is a way to create leverage against your growth, right, then less force with really good leverage would end up creating more total energy or whatever, right? If I'm getting the physics right. On the other hand, slightly less leverage on the playbook, but more force via an employee who's spending 100% of their time thinking about your business applied against that leverage could actually still create more power. Okay, so that's the basic trade-off that you're trying to work out. That combination of operationalized playbook and talent, and how you service that. In most cases, actually, it will be fairly clear if you actually go look for those specific things. But occasionally, it can be hard to sort that out. And that's where you probably have to think more specifically and carefully about your business and the individuals involved. Let's also talk about the downsides of each. The downsides of in-housing that people forget about a lot is that people leave. People always worry about this with agencies, right? That like a strategist is going to be in your account for 6 months or a year, then they're going to get promoted or taken somewhere else. That same thing happens with in-housing for the reason I just said. Really talented growth people make a ton of money and they will go take more opportunities. Okay, so in-house people leave, and if they haven't left behind a really clean operational playbook, you can actually go pretty far backwards. There's also a huge cost to replacing that person. And this is an underrated cost side of in-housing, not only the salary, but also the replacement costs of that person, right? Whether it's your time, whether it's your energy, whether it's a headhunting firm, anything like that, that can be a huge deal. Second, that person is very likely expensive. And this is really underrated by people. As I mentioned, the dynamics work so that highly talented growth people are expensive in general. But what people often don't think about is that they see the agency bill and they really worry about it. But when you start with a salary and then you burden it with medical taxes like 401k, anything like that, plus you add bonus options, plus for those people, a lot of times they're going to have an equity stake in the business, which I think is a good cost to pay. It actually often is more expensive to in-house a team than it is to hire an agency. And people sort of don't do the full math of what the total costs are on all of this. And again, especially with the time involved with hiring or not. And then there's also a thing where especially in lower levels, in-housing is often leads to people who twiddle their thumbs. If you have a person who's an in-house media buyer, they're never going to tell you that they don't have enough work to fill the day. They're just never going to tell you that, right? So you have to figure out, this person is underworked or whatever it is, and I'm not getting enough out of them. That depends on what level you're hiring at, but that there can be sort of a drain on your business because you start hiring people who aren't actually doing that much or creating that much value, and they are never going to be the ones to tell you about that, right? You have to go suss that out. That can be really hard. What about the agency downsides? There's the lack of consistency. That can be really, really hard. It's really hard to operationalize a playbook well. Again, this is why I have a couple of agency recommendations, but not that many, because I'm just not confident enough that the product that they say they can deliver is that consistent. The ones that I keep and that I keep affiliate relationships with are ones where I'm really confident in the product they're going to deliver at the end of the day. The idea that you get passed around from team member to team member, that can be a really big frustration with agencies. And sometimes just the fact that they're external can mean they're, less invested in you than somebody who's internal to the team. Those are all real issues. They also are a little less flexible. In some ways, I think that's actually an advantage for agencies. You want an agency, like I said, to have a playbook. And that means, by definition, they're going to run their plays. But sometimes there are things that you need specifically, or some advice you need or whatever, where an agency person it's out of the scope of work for them to get involved with a certain whatever, And so that can be a really big problem where you want somebody's brain on other parts of your business. And it's really hard to get your agency team involved there because it's outside of your scope. So all of those are challenging. So in the end, what I think is hire the best playbook. This notion that agencies are bad or wrong or something is just wrong. I think it's just really hard to hire the right one and hire the right people. What you need to do is learn the very best principles possible and then apply that through your organization, whether you're in-housing or whether you're using an agency. Look for that playbook. Look for people who are going to operationalize it, and then get access to the very best talent possible, whether it's through an agency or an individual, through the lens of that playbook mixed with some level of talent and effort. If you can do that really well, you can have actually great agency experiences. And so much of that starts by starting at the beginning and learning those things yourself. And that's what you should go do. But I have an incredible episode coming very soon with Jack Rubin, third-time guest, founder of Purdy and Fig, about when is it time to do channel expansion outside of just meta ads. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching, listening to this, so that you can get that episode. It's going to be really good. They saw I think he said 300% spend growth by adding other channels while maintaining their efficiency. So I'm really eager to talk to him. I actually have not had that conversation yet, but Jack is a brilliant operator I've worked with closely, seen the inside of his business, and he's going to talk about that moment of going from meta ads to adding other channels. That's a really confusing and challenging and hard thing. So I think it's going to be a really helpful episode. So don't miss out on that. As I said, please email me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com, or reach out on Twitter @AndrewJFerris. If you want to follow up on this, if you have questions, if you have ideas, if you want to know more about Admission, if you want to understand why I care about the things I do, or even you want a little hand holding on an agency recommendation, I'd love to do that. Understand your situation, understand where you're at, and tell you what I think is the right option for you. Based on the relationships that I have and the knowledge that I have, I'm really more than happy to. And of course, everything I'm doing is at ajfgrowth.com. You can follow up there. Don't forget my sponsors, Admission and Billy. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next time.